my rock bottom, I do remember it very significantly. There was a moment. It was actually, I was home for my mom's birthday. And I basically had a panic attack because along with eating disorders comes a lot of anxiety. Depression is all coupled in with it. So I basically had a panic attack and thought that I was having a heart attack. Because at that point I would have a lot of weird pains, some due to anxiety, some due to, being malnourished. But I ended up in the hospital on my mom's birthday.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jared Baston with Mark McCain, and you are listening to Triumph Every Day, where we discuss the journeys that shape the lives of our guests and how it brought them to where they are today. And the most special of guests today, Mrs. Lauren Baston.
Ooh, this kind of rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, that hard B.
I think it was meant to be.
We're technically not married. It is August 9th, but by the time this airs, we will be married.
Wow.
God willing, I guess, right? So I know obviously quite a bit about you, but there's a lot of stuff that people hear, people listening probably don't know about you. So I don't know. I'm going to let Mark do most of the talking for once.
Don't do that.
Let's just let's start out. Let's tell everybody where you're from and kind of where you came from. Because again, I know this is gonna be weird, you telling me all this stuff, but
yeah, sure. So I am from Kentucky, but to kind of go a little bit into my fitness journey, my background. I was an athlete in high school. I played volleyball and tennis all throughout high school. And went to college at Eastern Kentucky University, where I got into group fitness. I was a group fitness instructor there, so I got into some classes doing group fitness there. I majored in marketing. Started out as a nursing major, but couldn't stand the sight of blood, so majored in marketing. And
let's stop there for a second,
yeah.
Because this is just funny to me, honestly. We both share a, I don't know if it's a fear, whatever the effect is where my blood pressure drops to like 0 whenever I get a shot, where I just pass out. You kind of have the same thing, and I know there's a couple funny stories. As a nursing major, that may have come about, right?
Yeah. So when I was, I think it was organic chemistry. I was my second semester of nursing, about to start my clinicals. We were doing blood typing and just, the prick of the finger, squeezing out the blood. And I wasn't even doing it. My teacher was doing it, but she was one of those teachers who was
really into blood.
Yeah, and she was, kind of like telling us, like, you got to get in there and squeeze it out. And I just was standing back there, and I felt myself getting real dizzy. So I walked out of the classroom, and I kind of fell against the wall, and the bathroom was kind of catty-corner from me. So I get down on all fours, and I crawl to the bathroom because I couldn't stand up. And
college campus.
Yeah, college campus, yeah. And I remember being at the toilet and not knowing if I was going to throw up or pass out or what. And then the next thing I remember was waking up with the EMTs all around me. So apparently I passed out. Hey. And the person came in to clean the bathroom and found me and called 911. That should have been my sign to quit nursing school, but
a little nudge.
Wasn't a quitter, so I kept going and found my way into clinicals and ended up passed out my first day of clinicals as well. So that was when I officially threw in the towel.
How far into schooling were you? Like, how far is that our clinicals into schooling?
It was my second semester sophomore year. So
a year,
almost halfway through.
A year and a half to 2 years in?
Yeah.
That shouldn't be funny, but it's funny.
It's kind of funny.
It's kind of funny.
I just thought of a lot of jokes now we can play on you around here.
Great,
know.
can't wait.
But so you took a. Where'd you go from there? So you decided like, okay, maybe this isn't for me.
Yeah, I didn't really know what to do or where to go into. I honestly kind of looked at some of the stuff I was interested in, what I could possibly. I almost went into actually like a health or a fitness, because I was doing group fitness at the time and really liked it. But when I talked to my advisor, I was going to have to stay a lot longer than I wanted to finish with a fitness background, health and fitness. So there's a couple summer classes I was able to graduate on time with a marketing degree. So that kind of was where I decided to go, just to stay on track.
Your dad's in sales, and I mean, he's very, very, very good at it. So I don't know, did that play a part?
Yeah, it did for sure. Once I realized I wasn't going to be a nurse and I wasn't going to be a broadcaster, because that was originally what I wanted to do.
Broadcasting is one of those that is incredibly tough to get into, and incredibly even tougher for females, unfortunately. Darby, who comes here, she's in sporadically because she is so busy. She is a powerhouse when it comes to being dead set on her career. She's one. I talked to her the one day, and this is at the time. So she goes to NKU. I think did she recently graduate? I think, yeah. So I mean, but well, first off, she's someone asked her about, oh, you have a boyfriend? She said, I don't want a boyfriend because it's going to get in the way of what I want.
Oof.
That's huge. To have the wherewithal of that at 20, 21, that's crazy. But she goes to NKU, or went to NKU. Her broadcasting internship or job or whatever she had was at UK. She had to be on the field at 5 a.m. leaving from here.
Wow. So
she'd be getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, going down there for practice. Basically practice for her as well as their practice.
Yeah.
And parlayed that into she has I don't know if it's an internship, or I think it's the job with ESPN, and she gets to travel to X amount of games and all this stuff.
Awesome.
So it's really cool. I mean, she's a hard. Oh, not to mention she was a double major, triple minor, I think.
Mm. Wow. So you're saying hard work pays off?
It's weird. It's a weird concept. It's we talked about that with Bree a little bit, right? Where it's just like people are afraid to work.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
And unfortunately, everyone has FOMO, and it's like, if I work, I'm gonna miss out on all the fun things. And people, it's that delayed gratification of, hey, if I actually work really hard, I may be able to enjoy these things later. People don't want to do that. So, I digress. Get off my soapbox for a second. So, leaving school with a marketing degree, are you happy with the marketing degree at that point?
Yeah, I was. You talked a little bit about my dad, and it just kind of is fitting. One of my favorite classes I did was personal selling. So I knew I wanted to get into sales. Originally, when I wanted to do broadcasting, I wanted to do sports broadcasting. So sales and marketing, leaving NKU, I was looking for, or NKU. You said NKU. Yeah. EKU. I was looking for a job in sports marketing, really. So that's kind of how, when I left, I ended up with going through a sales training process with Major League Soccer. So, yeah, I was very happy, especially starting out and getting that opportunity was great. And
getting the opportunity to travel, yeah.
Yeah, I guess we should back up a little bit before then, because before I took a full-time job, I did have to take a few months and go to Arizona. So
we'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay. Well, yeah, I got to go to Minnesota for the sports training program, which wasn't that fun because it was Minnesota in January. And it was freezing.
We got you now.
It was a very interesting program. I got to learn a lot. It was a great opportunity. It was sponsored by Major League Soccer, and we literally...
Is it kind of... It sounds, from what you described, it's like a feeder system. So they kind of bring you in and like train you up into what they would look for their MLS sales.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's kind of like a feeder for the actual teams.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at the end of the program, or when you're ready, you graduate when you're ready. So when you're graduating, a few MLS teams will come and interview everybody, and then you get your offers and you get to pick where you go from there. And you picked? The Bengals. I actually didn't end up going to an MLS team. I got offers from Chicago Fire and Kansas City, Sporting KC. But I also, at that time, before I had went to the program, had interviewed with the Bengals, and they had come back and offered me a position. So I owned a house here still, and it made the most sense to come home. So I ended up coming home and working for the Bengals for about 2 years, and then eventually did end up moving out west to California to work for Los Angeles Galaxy. And how long are you out there for? I was out there for almost exactly 2 years to the day. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and it was a great experience. I loved being out there. Obviously, it's beautiful. I learned a lot. So one of my favorite positions I've ever had. Worked my way into supervisor for premium seating and sales out there, and just loved it, really, honestly. And for those of you guys who don't follow MLS but are listening and follow CrossFit, that was the StubHub Center. Yes. Which is where the CrossFit Games were held from 2011 or 2010. 2010. 2010 until recently, within the last 2 years. So, they did stuff on their main field, right? Yeah, they started out obviously small, just using the but it was like the tennis court and stuff like that. But tennis court, and they had a track, and then they ended up using the actual MLS. The actual MLS turf. Yeah. 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 So I actually sold two CrossFit Games. I was in charge of premium sales for 2 CrossFit Games, and they did. They the whole time I was there, they used the big field for kind of the qualifiers, things like that, leading up, and then the finals were always in the tennis court. And that's why they ended up moving out, actually, is the capacity of the tennis courts wasn't great. But they wanted it there because they wanted it to be more intimate. It was like 6,000 people or something? I think it was 8,000. 8,000? Yeah. Some seats and whatnot. And I remember us going out there in 2011, and it was it was packed, but it was like we could walk down. You could walk down. Yeah. It was like an empty Reds game, Yeah. And but it was just general admission. Seating. Yeah, general admission, and then it was like we literally went out there in 2011 with a cooler full of beer. Yeah. Bring it in. No money. I do vividly remember being at the hotel and stuffing my bag full of bagels and peanut butter because we had that and whatever their version of Hardee's is. Carl's Jr. We had Carl's Jr. That's the only thing we ate the whole time we were out there because we had no money. We'd spend it on everything else getting there and all that stuff. So didn't even go anywhere. It's like we're in California. I was exhausted. Yeah, walk from. Can't imagine what the athletes were feeling. We were exhausted just watching all day. Just watching and having 3 beers in the sun. It never failed. It was always the hottest weekend of the year. Yeah. It's normally even throughout summer 75 and sunny in Southern California, and it was always in the 90s. Yeah. And not to mention the turf was not because the Galaxy, they play on actual grass. Yes, it is. But the one area they were on was turf. Track. And it'd be all right, it's 89 degrees out and it's 114 on the turf. Yeah. So, go ahead. No, I was gonna say maybe just contrast and compare maybe those jobs between organizations. Being with the Bengals, being with the Galaxy, is it just pretty straightforward? You're just kind of selling ticket packages, or they're completely different? Are you interacting with, play? Mm-hmm. I'm sure someone on the surface would be like, wow, what's Marvin Lewis like? Yeah. It's I don't have meetings with him, or maybe you do. In my position, I was a lot more involved in the team and everything at LA Galaxy than at the Bengals. Obviously, I was fresh out of college. Sure. I did see players, and I saw Marvin. mostly I would see Marvin in the mailroom when he was in there for something. Yeah, we
don't
talked.
Screw this up.
He was very nice. He was always very nice to me. I still remember him and his wife got us all Christmas presents, and it was just really sweet. They were like Bengals wine glasses, and I was like, oh, that's super nice. And we were allowed to use the gym during certain hours, so I'd see the players from time to time, or working training camps, things like that. We'd come in contact with them.
But primarily, are you cold calling people, or is it like you're calling people from like about renewing packages or?
So in the premium world, it's a little bit different than just the straight up sports ticket sales.
Yeah.
We cold call like corporations, things like that,
gotcha.
people who want to use it for entertainment purposes. Sure. We were also doing, and this is kind of because it's Bengals, it's kind of funny. We were doing like an amnesty deal where people who previously had club season tickets could come back and not pay the seating licenses and get a discount. So that was really my program, and my job was to call these people and find out why they left and how we could get them back.
What and this is actually something we've never really talked about. Just out of curiosity, because Cincinnati sports get kind of shit on, for lack of a better term, a lot by the people who live here. If we're doing bad, like the whole city is a giant bandwagon, and it's probably true in a lot of cities. But like now we have FC Cincinnati, we have 3 major league sports teams in a relatively small city. Not many cities have that, and,
right.
and like I feel like the whole city just bandwagons. Like we've been to Reds games where there's no one. I mean, absolutely no one there. Like it's like. And I know it's such a big stadium, but like it just feels so empty. And when the Bengals do bad, no one shows up. No one at all. So what's that like, riding a wave of when we're doing good? Because I'm sure you can tell.
Oh yeah, and it's one of those things where you're watching on Sunday night. If it's an away game.
Because it's affecting your income. Whether they do good or bad.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and like I said, it's you're watching on Sunday night and you're just hoping that we win, because that really just determines what sort of Monday you're gonna have.
When you only got 16 games,
yeah,
it's not like the Reds where
right.
we got 172 of these bad boys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember just going in on Monday mornings after they would just have a terrible loss and getting on the phones and just. You would hear it from people. Like they thought that it
was your fault.
It was
right.
Right. Or I
you
had
have a direct
something
line
to do with it.
You ran the ball that
right.
play.
Like if I tell her, what I think, she's gonna go tell Marvin and
like who runs on 3rd and 8?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so.
we don't have to dive super deep, obviously, down that rabbit hole or whatever. But I was just kind of more like curious, like all right, like kind of just a little bit of contracts. So. Bengals and then to the Galaxy. I think they were pretty good, right? They won the championship. Yeah.
Yes.
So you went from that to
yeah,
a very successful team.
But it's interesting because my first year out there, my first full season there, we did win the MLS Cup. It was Landon Donovan's last season. He announced he was retiring. It was his last season. We had just a lot of people that wanted to come on board. They were doing well. They ended up winning the cup. So renewals for the next year despite Landon leaving, they were really good.
Sure.
And then the next year we did not do so well. And it was just very interesting to see, the compare and contrast of that.
And two, we've the FC games that we go to, you're talking about your experience there, and there's this USL team is selling higher ticket sales than an MLS. And granted, the profit margin on a USL game is much lower than like an MLS game because your ticket prices and everything are going to be much more expensive. But I feel like in LA, in a city that big and that nice and the weather's always nice, it's like there's other things to do.
Right.
In Cincinnati, it's like, all right, we got this. And we got this other thing and one other thing to do.
I think there's some undertones there, just like Cincinnati. You said I'm not from here. You guys are. But I feel like they're just desperate for a winner.
Oh, Oh,
You
yeah.
know, like they.
We are now.
I mean, now that Cleveland's
they're-
won,
We are now the longest running city without a championship.
Yeah, there you
So,
go. So I mean,
in a
they're-
professional sport.
and you know, Lauren was seeing it on the front lines of it's just, you know, it's easier to sell things if you're winning. It's easier for people, you know, to sign up here at Triumph whenever they see a lot of people here.
Yep.
You know, if they come in and it's an empty gym and they're like, what the heck's going on? You know, so it's just one of those like kind of momentum things.
Yeah.
And, you know, being from Pittsburgh area, you know, city of champions. What's up? Anyway,
I did deal with Kristen.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. You know, when you know we've been blessed, obviously, to have Super Bowls for the Steelers and then championships for the Penguins, Stanley Cups for the Penguins as well. But the Pirates have been kind of a laughing stock for a long time. You know, they had 17 consecutive losing seasons. It was the most ever in the major leagues. I didn't feel like a lot of people in general just like completely wrote them off. I mean, for sure, there became the stigma around them, around basically anytime they would get a good player, they would trade them away. You know, I think one of the things I heard, they were the New York Yankees like farm team. So not to say that, you know, again, it was a lot easier to just like, all right, well, we'll focus on the Steelers and the Penguins, and you know, the Pirates are the Pirates. But to have probably all three of it, like you're saying, hey, the Bengals and the Reds are obviously the big kind of ticket items in Cincinnati. For both of them to kind of struggle year in and year out, I can see where if someone came in like the Cincinnati, you know, all of a sudden this FC Cincinnati thing, and they're rolling through, and you know, it's fun and it's interesting, and they're winning. You can kind of see why.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's been cool to watch.
Yeah.
And I think in general, and I noticed this being in the NFL as well as the MLS, the MLS does a really good job, and I think it is because it's a newer, you know, organization, it's a newer professional sport in the country, but they do a really good job of interacting with the fans, interacting with the community. The players are a lot more accessible to the community. They do a lot with youth soccer programs. You know, if you go to any of those games, there's always, you know, kids on the field. Even LA Galaxy, even when David Beckham played, they had, it was called the high five line and the star lineup. So they would have two youth teams every game. Come, like when they announced the players, they would walk in holding their hands.
Yeah.
Like,
That's awesome.
That's an international thing too.
Yeah, yeah.
And just from a guy who's visually oriented, their branding's way better than any. it just is like the Bengals. It's middle of the road America. You know, the Cincinnati Reds are very traditional, but they have, you know, Mr. Redleg and all this stuff, and like you have the little mustache thing, which makes it a little more interesting to like younger crowds because it's like slightly ironic, but like the FC brand is geared towards people who go to Nippert Stadium, like you know, 19 to 23-year-olds, you know, so like it's their branding's just way better, and they've done a really good job with it. I hope they don't change a whole lot. So because
it'll be interesting.
Yeah. I kind of want to touch back on talking about going to Arizona. So we deal with a lot of this on a regular basis, you and I together. And there's a lot of people that maybe don't know this about you. And I don't know, it's tough because, you know, we just had our friend Kristen on here, and you know, Kristen went through a really tough time with some cancer, but it's like one of those things that doesn't necessarily define her, but it's a part of her life. But for her, it's like it was a disease that hopefully she's putting behind us. This is something that you kind of live with almost every day. Yeah. So maybe just go a little bit into kind of your experience and having to go to treatment and all that kind of stuff.
So what, you know, you're alluding to obviously is my journey with living with an eating disorder. It started in college. I thought that I was, you know, just being super healthy, and you know, as I mentioned before, I was a group fitness instructor, so I was working out several times a day. I became what they call addicted to exercise and exercise bulimia. So basically, I would work off anything that I ate.
And not to be confused with bulimia, where you're actually physically
exactly
throwing up.
So it's the same concept, only I'm working, instead of eating and then throwing up, purging that way, I'm eating and then exercising to a extent that is, harmful for my body. And then I started just with that, and then I started getting really into nutrition and the foods I was eating, and I cut out a lot of foods out of my diet, and I never went days and days and days without eating, but it was the small amount that I was eating coupled with the over-exercise that really did it for me. So after being kind of in denial about having a problem for a few years, I was diagnosed with anorexia and exercise bulimia my senior year of college.
What you talk about denial? What are, everyone talks about you kind of have to hit a rock bottom.
Uh-huh.
What was the bottom for you? Or was there one?
Yeah, there was a couple. The thing that made me first seek help was I went through a really bad breakup. Part of that was because I was so sick that, I couldn't be a good girlfriend or friend to anybody at that point. And I went to treatment for the breakup, and my therapist actually helped me realized that I was, I had these symptoms of an eating disorder. So for me, I tried to do treatment by myself for a while, after I went through the breakup, and then I kind of talked myself out of it.
What is treatment involved? So you're doing this, you said treatment by yourself.
So I was trying to go to a dietitian. I would travel to Lexington from Richmond twice a week and go see a dietitian. And I would see a therapist. And then, it's basically outside of seeing a therapist twice a week and a nutritionist twice a week, I was on my own to, do the meal planning and do, the homework that they would give me. But the hardest thing for me was just doing that. I kind of re-talked myself out of, it's like, oh, I don't have a problem. I can do this. I'm fine. And then it wasn't until my rock bottom, I do remember it very significantly. There was a moment. It was actually, I was home for my mom's birthday. And I basically had a panic attack because along with eating disorders comes a lot of anxiety. Depression is all coupled in with it. So I basically had a panic attack and thought that I was having a heart attack. Because at that point I would have a lot of weird pains, some due to anxiety, some due to, being malnourished. But I ended up in the hospital on my mom's birthday. And it was basically just for dehydration and malnutrition. And that was when I was kind of like, okay, I can't do this alone.
Yeah. And that was your first treatment center.
That was when I agreed to go to my first treatment center. So I talked to the doctors. They wanted me to go right away, but I was basically 2 weeks away from graduating and 3 weeks away from my roommate's wedding. And I was like, I will, I'll stick to a meal plan. I just really want to graduate. I really want to, walk and graduate, and I really want to be, I was in my roommate's wedding. So I literally left the day after Beth and Justin. Some of you guys might remember Justin Reynolds, who came here for a while. I left to go to Arizona for treatment the day after their wedding.
And that, we've talked about it too. Not only are you doing detriment to yourself, but you had a lot of relationships that really struggled and suffered from it, right?
Yeah. I mean, everything from, friendships. I wasn't a great friend.
What do you mean, you're not a great friend? Is it because you're only solely focused on, I can't hang out with you guys because I'll have to exercise if we go out and eat, or is it like you're just, I mean, you've seen me hangry.
It was more, it's weird when you get into a deep state of, your eating disorder and your depression. It's a couple things. I didn't go out as much as a lot of people did, my senior year of college, because I would stay home, and I was also a perfectionist, so I was very into school. I graduated with like a 3.9 GPA.
Yeah, you're much smarter than I am. You don't have to throw that in my face, man.
So I was focused on school, but I used that a lot as an excuse to, not go out to eat and not. And even when I did, I wasn't truly myself. I wasn't the person that people met my freshman, sophomore year. I was kind of a shell of who I was. And I don't honestly, my friends now will joke about it, but they'll bring up like a girl that was a freshman, because I was in a sorority. They'll bring up a girl that was a freshman when we were a senior, and I honestly don't remember things because I was so sick. People, events, they'll talk about things that happened, and I just don't, I can't recall them.
Yeah, it just consumed you.
Yeah.
All consuming.
And it's an addiction. Like, you have a disease, you
need treatment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, and I think there's this weird stigma surrounding, and that's one thing that I personally love about you so much, is being open and able to talk about things that affected you and still affect you very deeply. Mm-hmm. Because, I know we've talked about people you see kind of along the way, and you're just like, they need help. And you can see that because you've been there, and it's just really tough. And I think being open and able to talk about it, if nothing else, if you can get someone to like realize that, like, wow, maybe it's not as crazy to think that I could get help.
Mm-hmm. And I wasn't as open about it until after my second treatment center and after I was recovered for a while. And I realized that talking about that, there's a lot more people out there, even if it's not a full-blown eating disorder, there's a lot of people out there who have disordered eating or disordered body image or distorted body image.
I mean, all of us do, and not to speak on Mark's behalf, but I mean, I know, like, Mark is big, he's broad-shouldered, but in your mind, you're small. And I know, as someone who's known you for a while now, I know that's not true. But, it's like, and
thank you, Jared.
Yeah. Mark's abs stick out of his shirt. Like, that's the thing, it's something that, a lot of us strive for. But, it's one of those things. I know for a while you were, I got to go home and eat a whole pizza.
Right.
Because I need calories. And then I'm not going to keep putting words in your mouth, but like, I know from what we've talked about is like, wow, I feel like crap.
Yeah, it's all accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. One of the things I'll jump in on is, just to further that point, my sister battled anorexia in high school, and she was probably about 5'6", and she shares this with people, and she tries to get it out, and I think it's great to talk about it. I mean, you're super brave for coming on and sharing, and she hid it for a very, very long time. In some example, so the trigger point for her was someone called her fat.
Yeah.
That's
crazy. And that's crazy.
Someone, it's high school, right?
Yeah,
someone
exactly.
called her fat, and all of a sudden, my sister went from having just normal-ish kind of birthdays to asking my mom to make banana bread for her birthday cake, and all of her clothes don't fit her anymore, and all of a sudden she's 5'6", and she's down to 98 pounds.
Wow. Yeah.
As an 18-year-old, and she tries to help people as much as, and I'm sure it's still something she battles to this day after having three kids, and she's, as soon as same way that she'll get pregnant and swell up and have a kid, she is right back on to being thin again, and she's still very, very tiny.
Yeah.
So on and so forth. But anyway, I think to your point, everyone, even if you personally, you don't want to come to terms with you struggle with it or have your body issues, someone within your circle does. And they might be too scared to talk about it. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, of course.
What, so you said second treatment center. So you go to one, and we've talked about things that happen there and just how, you know, I know you can joke and laugh about it now, but I mean, there's some, you know, your insurers and Skittles.
If anybody has not tried it, Reese Puffs with butter, I think it's buttercream and Sure Plus. It's really good. It's really good.
Sounds amazing.
You ever need some calories?
There you go. So you go to a first treatment center and you're doing okay for a while, and then eventually you have to go back.
So the thing about treatment, and I think this goes for any sort of, you know, disorder, anything. And, you know, one of the things you said about your sister that kind of brought up a point that I wanted to share. One of the things that you learn is that people are pre-wired for eating disorders. Some people don't believe that, but I could hear the exact same thing that my friend hears, and I'm going to take it completely differently, and that's going to trigger me to, you know, start down a path just like you said your sister did. So it is, you know, and I think that that's something that was hard for me because I kept thinking it was a choice and something I could just choose to do or not to do, and that's not the case. And like you mentioned, it's something that will always be with me. But along with that, when you go to treatment and when you go to a treatment center, you have to be ready. And I think that's with any sort of, you know, addiction, drug addiction, alcoholism.
I think you, not even just addiction, you just insert the word change.
Yeah.
Because we see that here. You know, we coined a little, you know, it's a phrase, and it's not really ours, but like we always say that CrossFit is for everyone, fitness is for everyone, but you have to be mentally ready for it. Because we get a lot of people in here that get a hair up their butt and say, I'm going to change everything. And generally speaking, that doesn't work in their favor.
Right.
So
It's not practical.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. It's not practical. Yeah.
It's like any quick fix or, you know,
Yeah.
like diet. It's a
So anyway,
lifestyle.
sorry to jump in.
No,
on
you're fine. And the first time I went, you know, as I mentioned before, I was right out of college, and I was very ill, to the smallest and sickest point I ever was with my eating disorder. But I wasn't mentally ready to completely give it up. Even going into treatment, and, you know, you'll talk to some people about this. Some people don't believe in inpatient treatment because they think it's just like a breeding ground for more eating disorders. You go in there and you get tips and tricks, and you find out what other people were doing.
What was that Netflix show we watched?
What's it called? Bone? Something
Bones?
about
Bone?
No.
It was eye-opening for me.
Yeah.
You know, and just seeing some of these, like, you know, you're in an outpatient center, and, you know, you're supposed to be getting better, but everyone's got these little, you know, like you said, tips and tricks to, like, cheat the system, so to speak.
Oh yeah, I remember we would get in trouble. Like, I would be standing in line for a meal, and I'd be just like shaking my leg, and it was called like excessive movement. Like, we would get in trouble for like moving too much because
'Cause you're
that
anxious?
was burning calories.
Oh, wow.
Like, if we were like just fidgeting or like swaying from side to side, yeah, it was burning calories. So we would get in trouble for that. And I remember being at Remuda, like I said, I thought I was ready.
You went because you had to.
Yeah, I went because I had to. And I remember being once I was able to move out of the main house into a little cabin, I remember going down there like in our free time and like doing sit-ups and push-ups, and obviously things that are not, you know, helping me get better. And I was kind of rushed through the system due to some insurance things. And so, long story short, I was better for a little while, and then I went right back to my old habits. And some different habits, and some things that I actually learned while I was in treatment. And I ended up having to go back to a treatment center, and this time I did it on my own terms, and I think that was what made all the difference. I was actually the one that told my parents I was going this time.
I think there's something to be said about that, having to do something and wanting to do something.
Yeah.
I mean, again, just correlating it to here, we see people who have to come here, and they almost never, ever follow through with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, versus the people who really want to make a change or really just want something different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there's an absolute truth to wanting to do something and having to do something.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't. I mean, think of college courses where it's like, I have to take English 101. I want to take this thing that I'm very interested in.
Right.
You know? So you go through second treatment center, and you're not just magically better.
No.
But you are given. I think that is the maybe a misconception about people who don't really know anything about any sort of addiction or disorders. You're given tools to kind of carve your journey through life out with, right?
Right.
So what are some of those tools that were given?
I mean, some of the biggest things, honestly, it's just changing our thoughts. So it's like,
What's the actual terminology called?
CBD.
Yeah.
Cognitive behavioral, or CBT, sorry, therapy. And then there's DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. So I did both of those, but it's catching a thought in your head and realizing, okay, this is what I think, what is the truth? So mayonnaise was one of my fear foods. Everybody's are different. Mayonnaise was one of mine. So my thought was, if I eat mayonnaise, I'm automatically going to get fat. And that's what would go through my mind. So I didn't want to eat it, and I was afraid of it. So it's catching that thought of whatever it is. It can be a food thing. It can be a multitude of things.
Yeah.
But I think that if I eat this, I'm going to gain 20 pounds. The reality is, this is a very small portion of my day. You know, if I eat this, I'm not going to gain 10 pounds.
You're taking a step back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because if you're in this moment and all you're focused on is this little tiny thing, the only thing you can see is this. But what you're trying to do is you take a giant mental step back to see a much broader picture.
Right. And it's, you know, it's constantly talking to myself, basically. At first it wasn't just talking to myself. It was writing things down, okay, I'm feeling anxious. What is my thought? What is the reality? What can I think instead of this? Or what's the truth? So a lot of that, you know, through therapy, and to the point where it becomes engraved in your mind. And sometimes I still use it, and sometimes I listen to it and sometimes I don't. And
that's what I'm here for.
I listen more than I don't now, and I think I'm never going to be perfect. You know, I'm never going to not.
I think you're perfect.
Oh, thanks, babe. I'm never going to not, you know, have a hesitation every time I eat a piece of pizza, and that's something that I live with. And I'm never going to freak out if I miss. Well, maybe I won't, but maybe there'll be a time when I don't. But I still, you know, if I miss a couple of days of working out in a row, I still.
And we talk about that. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's literally.
And it's the openness and willingness to talk about it too that makes me better. Because if I keep that inside and then I just go and work out 6 times in one day, you know, that's not healthy. If I tell you, you know, Jared, I'm feeling really anxious because I haven't been to the gym in 3 days.
We've gone through text message conversations and phone calls where I just get a text message that says, I'm feeling very anxious. And we talk about it. And we talk about the reality of where you're at, you know, and generally I think it helps. But, you know, what it comes down to is putting that decision back on you. Like, if you really feel like you have to do this to get through your day, then it's fine, but know that this is where it's coming from. You know,
I think, you know, that's ultimately what everyone's trying to do in life, is discover more truth. And I feel like that's what you're finding out as you're going through this journey, is just separating like false from truth, like reality.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you know what? If I don't work out for a week, guess what? The truth is, I'm probably, knowing like you guys are obviously getting married tomorrow, which is awesome, and you're gonna go to Ireland. There probably won't be a CrossFit gym on every corner or a workout station.
I'm not bringing anything this time.
Yeah, but the
like
truth,
we did for Rome. Sorry, let me jump in. Lauren,
but the truth, you know, you guys will still move. You guys are still going to be walking a bunch. So it's like, hey, maybe we don't work out every day, but the truth of the situation is we're not going to be sitting behind a desk all day eating potato chips.
To that exact point, Mark, is when we went to Italy. I mean, I think you actually had a conversation with your former therapist or something like that, where you're like, I'm feeling anxious because I haven't worked out. And they're like, she's like, Clark, you walked 13 miles today. That is a workout,
for sure. That's not an average day.
And I didn't mean to jump in on you, but like we brought, we were packing when we went to Italy, and
I researched CrossFit places.
She researched CrossFit. She's like, you want to bring shoes? I'm like, no. And she's like, well, just in case. So we packed them in there, and they stayed in the bottom of the bag because the first day we got there, we walked like 13 and a half miles. And I'm like, I can't move. Like, I'm done.
And that was one of my things that I got caught up on a lot was you don't have to go to a gym necessarily and like do a workout to have worked out that day. Like, if you hike or I used to think like yoga wasn't a workout. Like I was like, oh, I can do, like, I was on exercise restriction. I'm like, I can do yoga. And my therapist is like, no.
Yeah. I mean, you're preaching to the choir for sure, because we definitely see people that'll come in here, and if it's just like 5x5 bench press, and that's it.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, is that all we're doing? Like,
I need to go run.
They need that feeling of I have to be on my back in a pool of sweat.
If my heart rate is not at 90% maximal exertion, I haven't done anything.
And again, they haven't discovered that truth yet, or whatever that is, however you want to phrase it, in the sense of, hey, guess what? You can just come in, lift weights, take 2 minutes of rest between sets, and produce a good result for your body.
And the thing is, until you do what you're afraid of, you're not going to realize that what you're afraid of isn't going to happen. So I think that's a big thing with going through treatment too is, I was on a weight gain meal plan for the first time I went, 2 months. The second time I went, 4 months. And I was eating, like I just said, Ensure and Reese Puffs and all these things that scared the crap out of me because I thought if I ate them, I was going to gain a bunch of weight.
You were going to balloon and you'd be obese. And
the reality of it is I wasn't gaining weight at first at all. And, they had to increase my intake several times. And it's just like, even through those months and months of eating all these things that I was afraid of and not being able to work out, I wasn't obese when I left. And I wasn't, I think, I still had weight to gain, which was crazy to me because I thought that, so it's just, it's staring things that you're afraid of in the eye and like doing them. And until you can do that, you don't realize it.
So for anyone that may be listening or that may have some of these feelings, like what is some advice you can give someone, and maybe in either direction, maybe you feel like I eat too much or maybe I don't eat enough.
And that's the thing too is, throughout all of my treatments, I went to treatment with people who, were severely anorexic, severely bulimic, were overeaters, people who would eat things that weren't food. Yeah. So there's all different, it's a whole spectrum, of things. And I think that, one of my things when I went in treatment was I didn't feel like I was thin enough to go to treatment. I literally
I saw photos of you were thin enough.
Yeah, but in my mind, I would, and this is counterproductive, would starve myself for like the weeks before, like even more before I went in because I felt like I needed to be thinner. So I kind of got off on a tangent there. But anything that, you might be dealing with, the first thing to realize is that admitting that you're dealing with something like that or, asking for help doesn't make you weak. It makes you very strong. And I remember one of my psychiatrists in my first treatment center, this was for a different thing. I didn't want to go on medication, but basically he was like, if you had a broken leg and you refused to use crutches, that would make you an idiot, basically. So just because it's not an outward injury,
just because you can't see the bone doesn't mean there's something wrong.
Anything you're struggling with, if you refuse to do something that's going to help you get better, no one is ever going to fault you for wanting to make yourself better. And I think that that's
And I think too, realizing that the people that do don't have your best interests in mind, and there is a vast array of people in this world and personality types, and there will be people that will feverishly support you.
Oh yeah.
So speaking of that, you guys are gonna make the plunge tomorrow. I don't know how to say it. What does the future look like? Maybe put Jared in on this too. What does the future look like moving forward? Obviously, you guys have not only spoke this on the podcast, but I'm sure it's something you speak about. I don't want to say how often you guys talk about it, but I know Jarrett is very regimented about his nutrition, and
that's something I actually learned from that I had to take into account, because I am very type A, very regimented, very. I freak out when things are out of order, and had to learn. And I still remember it. We had a conversation, and I was kind of having a moment of like we have to do this, like, because this is the only time we have to do it. And I remember Lauren saying that, it's basically like, I don't want to have a schedule that surrounds food to being involved in my life. And like it for me, like, and again, I'm a guy where it's like, it's like, you want Chipotle? Yeah, let's go Chipotle. It doesn't work the same for her,
Sure.
So
what's that adjustment been like?
it's still tough, but I mean, it's, I think it's a give and take, just like anything in life. But, it's realizing that my habits may not fall into her best interest.
Into my recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just been it's been obviously a learning experience for both of us, and but at the same time, it's nice where she'll actually push me out, and it's like, we're gonna go have tacos on Friday, and go have a beer, and it's not gonna matter, and that's actually sometimes hard for me, because it's like,
Sure.
I want to be able to get up and not feel like crap when I work out in the morning, but at the same time, is it better to enjoy this time together and build our relationship, and maybe not feel the best if I'm working out in the morning?
Oh yeah, I got obviously news for you guys. I'm only a year into marriage, but it is about compromise.
Yeah.
So, what does this journey look like moving forward, Lauren?
I think one of the biggest things that I found even in treatment is, well, there's a couple things, but moderation. It's always everything in moderation. And
Sure.
like he said, sometimes I do have to just be like, okay, we've been eating so good for 5 days, let's go out and have some fun. And because for me, if I don't, then I get into this.
Well, in doing so allows us to go and have fun.
Right.
You it's not like I feel bad, doing it, but it's that 80-20 rule. It's knowing that, like, put the work in, like, it's okay to go and actually be social and enjoy yourself.
And I think as far as, us moving forward, Jarrett has really helped me in my recovery. Honestly, this gym has helped me in my recovery. Having somewhere to come and to work out, and to realize that I can just do 5x5 bench press one day. And I was one of those people who thought, I needed to do more. I'm honestly in the best shape of my life, and I'm working out significantly less than I used to.
That's great. That's
so
powerful.
I love being here. It's more of a social thing as well now.
And it's weird that you're a lot stronger than you once were.
I know, it's crazy. But yeah, this kind of allows me. It's a very happy medium for me. I think when I was still in therapy when I met Jarrett, and when she heard that he owned a CrossFit gym, she was like, "Nope, this isn't gonna work."
Unlimited access to a gym? I don't think so.
Yeah. But it really has helped me find that moderation and work out for the right reasons. So moving forward, like you said, obviously tomorrow's a big day, but we do a really good job of talking about things.
You actually said something, especially after the wedding. We're both anxious, and we're both nervous, and we're both on high alert for anything and everything that's going wrong or right. And you said something the other day about just, I can't wait, like, after the wedding, I just want to be able to, I forget the way you put it, but essentially, like, I don't want to have to monitor what I'm eating.
Yeah.
You know, just enjoy ourselves for a little bit. You
Yeah.
know, because you want to look good and feel good for the wedding. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
You know, but those on the outside who know you've been in treatment maybe think of like, oh, you're not eating enough, you're not eating enough of the right things, and it's like, you want to be able to look good for the wedding.
Yeah.
It's not meaning that you're going to revert back to
Exactly.
everything. And there's obviously reasons why there's fear of that, but at the same time, you've developed a lot of tools and a lot of knowledge that, and I won't let you. So it's another thing too. So, it's like, we're going to eat ice cream tonight and there's nothing you can do about it. So,
Open communication is definitely
that is probably the biggest
thing.
For both.
And having Jarrett is very helpful because he does try to understand and he does, recognize things in me and be like, okay, what's wrong? So,
Right.
I think just growing together and, like he said earlier in this thing, it is something that I do. Some people say that they can be completely recovered, and I've heard some people say they don't even think about, and I love to be at that place at some point, but for me, it's still in recovery. It's not recovered. And just realizing that and realizing that I still have to be aware and sensitive of it is a big thing for me.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that
course.
story, and I'm excited for you guys. Congratulations.
I do want to put out there, I know it's the end of the podcast, I want to wrap things up here, but are you okay with people maybe contacting you if they have questions? Mm-hmm. What's a good place to contact you?
I have a lot of people write me through Facebook. That's always a good way to get a hold of me if you don't know, my personal number or my email. I'm not always the best at answering that. So if it goes a couple days, it's not that I don't, I'm not paying attention. It's that I probably have not seen it. But that is probably the best way. Just know that it might take me a couple of days to respond.
Yeah, so Lauren's pretty open book about it. So if you guys have questions or not that you got to spill your guts out to her, but she's been through a lot. I've been through a lot with her, so feel free to reach out to me as well. More than happy to give my limited knowledge, but my experience, and I can at least direct you to her if she hasn't answered your Facebook message. So I'll wrap things up here. We can ask it. We got a couple minutes. What's your definition of success, babe?
Oh man, I feel like I should.
Clearly, you've never listened to our podcast.
I do. I just did not think about it. I think to be successful, the word success and failure kind of are simultaneous to me. Whenever I think of success, I think of failure and the fear of failure. So I think to be successful is to do something that you might be afraid of, knowing that there's a chance you might fail. Because I think a lot of people don't do things because they're afraid that they're going to fail at them. So, and I don't think of it as like an overall, I think there's a lot of small successes. I don't think you're either successful or unsuccessful. I think that, anytime you do something that you could fail at and you're afraid to do it and you do it, then that's a success.
Even if you fail.
Even if you
fail, it's still a success.
Comfort zone.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Mrs. Baston, for coming on.
That's weird.
Baston. I'm going to start calling you that now.
Thank you all for listening to Triumph Every Day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, and everywhere your favorite podcasts are found. You can find us on triumphstrength.net, on Instagram at triumphstrength, and on Facebook at facebook.com/triumphstrength. Thanks again, and we'll see you guys next week.
Peace.